Jake Morrison stood with his back straight in the briefing room of the GSV Horizon. The room was packed with cadets from 12 different worlds, each one wearing the same gray uniform, but looking nothing alike. Some had blue skin, others had scales, and a few had too many arms for Jake's comfort. But they were all here for the same reason, to learn how to protect the galaxy from the bad guys. Commander Lisa Rodriguez walked to the front of the room. She was a tough woman with short black hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. Jake had heard stories about her from the older cadets. She had fought in 3 wars and lived to tell about it. That was more than most people could say in this business. "Listen up, cadets," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Today you get your first real patrol assignments. This is not a drill. This is not practice. This is the real thing." Jake felt his heart beat faster. After 6 months of training, he was finally going to do something that mattered. He looked around the room and saw the same excitement on the faces of his classmates. Well, the ones who had faces that he could read anyway. "The Theta sector has been quiet for too long," Commander Rodriguez continued. "Intel reports suggest that Vorthon raiders might be moving through the area. For those of you who don't know what that means, let me explain." She pressed a button and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a creature that looked like a cross between a wolf and a dinosaur, standing 7 feet tall with claws that could cut through steel. Its eyes were yellow and hungry. "The Vorthons are apex predators," the commander said. "They hunt in packs of 5 to 8 ships. They are fast, smart, and they don't take prisoners. In the past month, they have hit 6 merchant vessels, no survivors." Jake's roommate, a tall alien named Crix-7, made a nervous clicking sound. Crix came from a peaceful world where the biggest predator was something like a rabbit. The idea of facing real killers scared him. "Your job is simple," Commander Rodriguez said. "Patrol your assigned sectors. Watch for anything unusual. Report, back every 2 hours. If you see Vorthons, you run. You do not engage. You do not try to be heroes. You call for backup and you get out of there. Is that clear?" "Yes, Commander," the cadets replied in unison. She began reading off the assignments. Each cadet got a sector number and a patrol route. Jake waited for his name, wondering where he would end up. He hoped for something interesting, but not too dangerous. He was brave, but he was not stupid. "Cadet Morrison," Commander Rodriguez called out. "You get Section 7 Alpha." Jake nodded and made note of his assignment. Section 7 Alpha was on the edge of the Theta sector, right where the Vorthon activity had been reported. It was exactly the kind of place where something bad could happen. After the briefing, the cadets filed out to prepare for their missions. Jake was heading to his quarters when someone called his name. He turned to see Amy Chen walking toward him. She was another human cadet, one of only 3 on the ship. She had grown up on Luna and joined the academy to see the galaxy. "Hey Jake," she said. "I heard you got 7 Alpha. That's a rough assignment." "It's just patrol duty," Jake replied with a shrug. "How bad can it be?" Amy looked at him like he had said something crazy. "Jake, 3 merchant ships disappeared in that sector last week. The debris fields are still there. Whatever hit them was big and mean. So I'll be careful," Jake said. "Besides, I'm not a merchant, I'm military, sort of." "You're a cadet with 6 months of training," Amy pointed out. "The Vorthons have been hunting in space for longer than humans have had fire." Jake thought about that for a moment. She was right, of course. The Vorthons were old and experienced. They had been raiding trade routes since before Earth had even been discovered by the galactic community. But something about that fact did not scare him the way it should have. "Look," he said. "I'll stick to the patrol route. I'll report in every 2 hours. If I see anything weird, I'll call for backup. What else can I do?" Amy shook her head. "I don't know. It's just that sometimes I think we humans don't understand how dangerous the galaxy really is. We come from Earth, where everything is trying to kill us all the time. We think that's normal, but it's not." Jake had heard this argument before. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, which meant it was one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Most alien species came from nice, safe worlds where the weather was predictable and the animals were friendly. They thought humans were crazy for living on a planet with hurricanes, earthquakes, poisonous plants, and predators that could tear a person apart. Maybe that's why they put us out here, Jake said. We're used to dealing with things that want to kill us. Or maybe they're hoping we'll get eaten so they don't have to figure out what to do with us, Amy replied. They walked in silence for a while, making their way through the corridors of the ship. The GSV Horizon was huge, with over 2,000 people aboard. Most of them were aliens, but there were enough humans to make Jake feel at home. Sort of. You know what's funny? Jake said as they reached the lift that would take them to their quarters. Every alien species I've met thinks humans are dangerous. They're all scared of us. But we're the ones who are always getting the dangerous assignments. Maybe that's because we're the only ones dumb enough to take them, Amy said with a smile. Jake laughed. Or maybe we're the only ones tough enough to handle them. The lift arrived and they stepped inside. As it carried them upward, Jake thought about his upcoming patrol. Section 7th or Alpha was a big area with lots of asteroids and not much else. It would be boring mostly. But if the Vorthons were out there, things could get interesting fast. He was not worried exactly. Humans had been dealing with predators for millions of years. It was what they did. But he was curious about what would happen if he actually ran into a Vorthon pack. Would he run like he was supposed to? Or would he do something else, something more human? The lift stopped and Amy got off at her floor. Be careful out there, Jake, she said. And remember, discretion is the better part of valor. I'll remember, Jake promised. But as the lift continued upward, he was already thinking about what he would do if running was not an option. Jake Morrison sat in the pilot's seat of his scout ship, the Wanderer. It was a small craft built for speed and stealth rather than fighting. The cockpit was cramped but comfortable, with displays showing everything from engine status to weapon systems. Not that the weapons would do much good against serious threats. The ship carried light plasma guns that were meant for scaring off pirates, not fighting real warships. He had been patrolling Section 7 Alpha for 6 hours now, and so far he had seen nothing but empty space and floating rocks. The asteroid field stretched out in all directions, creating a maze of stone and metal that could hide a fleet if someone knew what they were doing. Jake kept his sensors on maximum range, sweeping back and forth as he moved through the designated patrol route. The comm system crackled to life. Wanderer, this is Control. Report your status. Jake pressed the transmit button. Control, this is Morrison. All quiet out here. No contacts, no anomalies, just rocks and more rocks. Copy that, Wanderer. Maintain patrol pattern and report again in 2 hours. Understood, Control. Jake settled back in his seat and checked his instruments again. Everything looked normal. Too normal, maybe. In his experience, when things were too quiet, it usually meant trouble was coming. His father had taught him that back on Earth, during their hunting trips in the Canadian wilderness. The forest was never truly silent unless there was a predator nearby. He was thinking about those hunting trips when his sensor display lit up like a Christmas tree. Multiple contacts, moving fast, coming from the direction of the largest asteroid cluster. Jake leaned forward and studied the readings. 6 ships, maybe 7, all showing the sleek signatures of military-grade vessels. Well, that's interesting, Jake muttered to himself. He adjusted his sensors to get a better look. The ships were moving in formation, keeping close to the asteroids, for cover. They were good at staying hidden, but not good enough to fool military-grade detection equipment. Jake could see them clearly now, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The ships were Vorthon raiders. There was no mistaking the predatory design, all sharp angles and aggressive curves. Each vessel was 3 times the size of Jake's scout ship, armed with plasma cannons and boarding equipment. They were built for one purpose, hunting and killing. Jake's training kicked in immediately. He was supposed to report the contact and get out of the area as fast as possible. That was the smart thing to do. That was what any sane person would do when faced with a pack of apex predators in space. But Jake was curious. The Vorthons were not moving like they were hunting. They were moving like they were waiting. They had positioned themselves in a perfect ambush formation around a major shipping lane. Any merchant vessel that came through this area would fly right into their trap. Jake opened a comm channel to base. Control, this is Morrison. I have multiple contacts in grid reference 7 Alpha 9. Count is 6, possibly 7 vessels. Configuration matches Vorthon raider patterns. Static filled the channel for a moment before Commander Rodriguez's voice came through. Morrison, confirm your last transmission. Did you say Vorthon raiders? Confirmed. Control. 6 to 7 Vorthon vessels, in ambush formation. They appear to be waiting for targets. Morrison, listen carefully. Maintain your distance and observe only. Do not engage those vessels. We are dispatching back up to your location. Understood, Control. Maintaining observation distance. Jake cut the transmission and moved his ship to a better position behind a large asteroid. From here he could watch the Vorthons without being seen. At least he hoped he could not be seen. Fourth-hand sensors were supposed to be very good. He studied the alien ships through his scope. They were beautiful in a deadly way, like sharks or wolves. Each one was covered in scars from previous battles, and Jake could see weapon ports along their hulls. These were not new pirates looking for easy money. These were experienced killers who had been hunting in space for decades. The lead ship was larger than the others, with more scars and heavier weapons. That would be the pack leader, the Alpha Predator. Jake watched as it moved slowly through the asteroid field, its sensors sweeping back and forth like a hunting dog following a scent. What Jake did not know was that the Vorthons had already detected his approach. Their sensors were indeed very good, and they had been tracking his scout ship since he entered the patrol zone. The pack leader, a scarred veteran named Threx Prime, was studying the readings with interest. A lone human vessel, Threx Prime growled to his pack through their mental link. Small scout ship, lightly armed. Perfect for our purposes. One of the younger pack members, Crick Secondary, clicked his mandibles nervously. Pack leader, intelligence reports suggest that humans can be dangerous. Perhaps we should avoid this one. Threx Prime's laugh was like the sound of grinding metal. Dangerous? It is a single human whelp in a toy ship. We are 6 experienced hunters in battle-tested vessels. Besides, the slave markets pay premium prices for Deathworld specimens. This human will make us rich. The pack leader began issuing orders. The Vorthons moved with practiced precision, spreading out to surround Jake's position. They were experts at this kind of hunt, having captured hundreds of prey vessels over the years. They would disable the human's ship, board it, and take the pilot alive. Simple and profitable. Jake watched his tactical display as red contacts began appearing around his position. The Vorthons were closing in, their cloaking systems shutting down as they prepared to attack. He counted 6 ships, all moving to surround him. In a few minutes, he would be trapped with no way to escape. His heart began beating faster, but not from fear. It was excitement. Back on Earth, his ancestors had faced similar situations countless times, surrounded by predators, outnumbered and outgunned with only their wits and determination to keep them alive. And somehow, they had always found a way to turn the tables. Jake looked at his weapon systems. The light plasma guns would barely scratch the paint on a Vorthon warship. His engines were fast, but not fast enough to outrun 6 pursuers. His shields would last maybe 30 seconds against concentrated fire. By any reasonable measure, he was completely outmatched. But Jake was not thinking about reasonable measures. He was thinking about something his grandfather had told him years ago, during a camping trip in Alaska. They had encountered a pack of wolves, and instead of running, his grandfather had stood his ground and stared them down. The wolves had eventually moved on, apparently deciding that humans were more trouble than they were worth. Sometimes, his grandfather had said, the best way to deal with predators is to remind them that you're a predator too. Jake smiled and opened a general communication channel. If the Vorthons wanted to hunt him, they were about to learn something interesting. About humans. They were about to discover why Earth was called a death world, and why every other species in the galaxy was secretly afraid of the creatures that had crawled out of its gravity well. The trap was closing around him, but Jake Morrison was not thinking about being trapped. He was thinking about teaching some alien predators a lesson they would never forget. Jake Morrison looked at his tactical display one more time. 6 red dots surrounded his position, moving closer with each passing second. The Vorthen raiders had him trapped in a perfect hunting formation. Any normal pilot would be calling for help or trying to run. But Jake was not thinking like a normal pilot. He reached for his communications panel and opened a general broadcast channel. His finger hovered over the transmit button for a moment. Once he started talking, there would be no going back. He was about to do something that would either save his life or get him killed very quickly. Vorthen vessels, this is Cadet Jake Morrison of the Galactic Naval Academy, he said into the microphone. His voice was calm and steady, like he was ordering coffee instead of talking to a pack of alien killers. I would like to have a conversation with you. The response came quickly. A deep, growling voice filled his cockpit, speaking in accented but clear standard. Human whelp, you are surrounded by the finest hunters in this sector. Prepare to be boarded. You will make a valuable addition to our collection. Jake smiled. The Vorthens thought this was going to be easy. They had probably captured dozens of ships the same way, overwhelming their prey with superior numbers and firepower. But they had never tried to capture a human before. Actually, Jake replied, still using the same conversational tone. I was hoping we could talk about something first. You see, I am from Earth, and we have some interesting ideas about what happens when predators try to hunt us. There was a pause. Jake could imagine the Vorthen pack leader trying to figure out what kind of game the human was playing. In the Raiders' experience, trapped prey either begged for mercy or tried to bargain with money. They did not start casual conversations about their home planets. Speak quickly, Deathworlder, the voice growled. Our patience has limits. Jake leaned back in his pilot seat and looked out at the stars. The thing is, my species has a really long history with predators. We have been dealing with things that want to eat us for about 2 million years. We got pretty good at it. He paused to let that sink in. On the Vorthen ships, he knew the aliens were probably wondering where this was going. They were used to fear and desperation from their victims, not history lessons. Take wolves, for example, Jake continued. Beautiful creatures, really smart, pack hunters. They used to hunt my ancestors all across Europe and Asia. Big problem for early humans. You know what we did about it? What did you do, human? The question came from a different voice, younger and more curious than the pack leader. We turned them into dogs, Jake said cheerfully. Domesticated the whole species. Now they fetch our newspapers and sleep on our beds. We took apex predators and turned them into pets that do tricks for treats. The comm channel went quiet for several seconds. Jake could see on his scanner that the Vorthen ships had stopped moving. They were still surrounding him, but they were not closing in anymore. Then there were the big cats, Jake went on. Lions, tigers, leopards, all of them bigger and stronger than humans with claws that could cut us in half. Natural-born killers that had been perfecting their hunting skills for millions of years. Jake checked his weapon systems while he talked. The plasma guns were still useless against Vorthen armor, but he was not planning to use weapons anyway. He had something much better in mind. You know what happened to them? Jake asked. We put them in zoos. We study them. We take pictures of them. And we charge admission for people to come look at them. The king of beasts ended up as a tourist attraction. The pack leader's voice came back, but it sounded different now, less confident. What is your point, human? My point is that humans have a very specific way of dealing with predator problems, Jake replied. We do not just survive them, we solve them, permanently. Jake could see on his scanner that one of the Vorthen ships was backing away slightly. Good. They were starting to think instead of just reacting. That was exactly what he wanted. See, most species in the galaxy evolved as prey animals, Jake explained. When something tries to eat them, their first instinct is to run away. That makes sense. Running away keeps you alive. He adjusted his sensor array to get a better look at the Vorthen formation. They were definitely less aggressive now, more cautious. The lead ship was still in position, but the others were spreading out instead of closing in. But humans evolved as persistence hunters, Jake continued. When something tries to eat us, our first instinct is not to run. It is to figure out how to make sure it never tries to eat anyone again. The younger Vorthen voice spoke up again. Pack leader, perhaps we should reconsider this hunt. Silence, the leader snapped. but Jake could hear uncertainty in his voice. "Oh, I am not threatening you," Jake said quickly. "I am just sharing some cultural information, like the fact that humans are one of the only species that gets more dangerous when they are scared. Most creatures have fight or flight responses. We have fight or fight harder responses." Jake powered down his weapons completely. The gesture was calculated to confuse the Vorthans even more. What kind of prey disarmed itself when surrounded by predators? "For instance," Jake said, "did you know that Earth is the only planet in the galaxy where the primary intelligent species regularly engages in recreational combat? We call it sports. We pay money to watch each other fight." The Vorthon pack was definitely wavering now. Jake could see it in the way their ships were positioned. They were no longer in attack formation. They were in defensive positions, watching him instead of preparing to board his vessel. "We also have this interesting psychological trait," Jake added. "When we are cornered by predators, we do not panic. We get calm. Really, really calm. And then we start thinking of creative solutions to our predator problem." The pack leader tried to sound commanding, but his voice cracked slightly. "You are bluffing, human. You are alone and outnumbered." "Oh, I am definitely alone and outnumbered," Jake agreed. "But here is the thing about being a human in that situation. It does not make us want to surrender. It makes us want to teach the predators why hunting humans is a bad idea." Jake smiled as he watched the Vorthan ships on his scanner. They were still surrounding him, but they were not acting like hunters anymore. They were acting like prey that had suddenly realized they might have bitten off more than they could chew. The real fun was about to begin. Jake Morrison watched his scanner as the Vorthan ships continued to hold their positions. They were still surrounding him, but something had changed. The predators were thinking now instead of just hunting. That was good. Thinking predators made mistakes. Hunting predators just killed you. "You know what the really interesting part is?" Jake said, continuing his impromptu lecture. "I have been reading about Vorthon hunting patterns in my xenobiology classes. You guys are ambush predators, right? Pack hunters who rely on overwhelming isolated prey with superior numbers and firepower. Your point, human?" The pack leader's voice was still trying to sound threatening, but Jake could hear the uncertainty underneath. "Well, the thing is, humans evolved alongside some of the nastiest ambush predators in the known galaxy. We had to deal with crocodiles that could snap us in half, big cats that could kill us with one swipe, bears that weighed 10 times what we did, and snakes that could kill us with a single bite." Jake made some adjustments to his ship's power systems while he talked. He was redistributing energy from weapons to shields and engines, but he was doing it slowly so the Vorthons would not see it as a threatening move. "And you know what happened to most of those predators?" Jake asked. The younger Vorthan voice answered before the pack leader could stop him. "What happened to them?" "We ate them," Jake said simply. "Or we made them into pets. Sometimes we did both. We took every major predator on Earth and we either made them extinct or we made them work for us." Jake could see on his display that 2 of the Vorthan ships were now backing away from his position. The pack was starting to break up. Fear was a powerful thing even for apex predators. "Take bears," Jake continued. "Massive creatures 8 feet tall, claws like knives, teeth that could crush bones. They ruled the forests of Earth for millions of years. Natural-born killers that nothing else wanted to mess with." He paused for effect, watching as another Vorthan ship moved to a more defensive position. "We hunted them for sport. We put their heads on our walls and made rugs out of their skins. We turned the kings of the forest into decorations for our living rooms." The pack leader tried to regain control. "These are just stories, human. Ancient history. You are still alone and we are still 6. "Oh, I am not talking about ancient history," Jake replied. "I am talking about what humans do when they encounter predator problems. We study the problem, we figure out the best solution, and then we implement that solution on a planetary scale." Jake's voice remained conversational, but there was something underneath it now that made the Vorthon's instincts start screaming warnings. For example, when humans first encountered mosquitoes that carried diseases, we did not just try to avoid them. We genetically modified them so they could not reproduce. We made an entire species sterile because they were inconvenient. The youngest member of the Vorthan pack, Crick Secondary, felt his hands begin to shake on his ship's controls. Pack leader, this human speaks of things that are not natural. Perhaps we should find easier prey. I said be quiet. Threx Prime snapped, but his own confidence was crumbling with each word the human spoke. Or take rats, Jake went on. Small, fast, smart creatures that competed with humans for food and space. They were perfectly adapted for survival, bred faster than anything else and could live almost anywhere. Jake checked his scanner again. Half the Vorthan pack was now in full defensive positions, their weapons powered down and their shields up. They were acting like prey instead of predators. We created poisons that target their specific biology. We bred cats specifically to hunt them. We built traps, we used sonic weapons, we even trained birds to eat them. We turned the entire ecosystem against them because they got in our way. The pack leader was trying to sound confident, but his voice was getting higher. You are trying to scare us with stories, human. We are not rats or bears or mosquitoes. We are Vorthans. We are apex predators. You are absolutely right, Jake agreed. You are apex predators. Very good ones from what I have read. You have been hunting successfully in this sector for decades. You are smart, fast, and dangerous. Jake paused and let that compliment sink in before continuing. But here's the thing about being an apex predator that hunts humans. We study you. We learn everything about you. We figure out your weaknesses, your habits, your psychology, and then we design specific countermeasures. Jake's scanner showed that only 3 Vorthan ships were still in attack positions. The other 3 had moved to the edge of weapons range and were clearly ready to run if things went bad. You hunt merchant vessels because they are soft targets with minimal defenses. You use pack tactics because overwhelming force usually works against frightened civilians. You rely on fear and shock to make your prey freeze up so you can board them easily. Jake's voice became almost gentle, like a teacher explaining a simple concept to a slow student. But I am not a civilian, and I am not defenseless. I am a military cadet from a Class 12 Deathworld, and my species has some very specific ideas about what to do with predators. The pack leader's voice was barely a whisper now. What ideas? We solved the predator problem, Jake said simply. Permanently, systematically, completely. Jake could see that the Vorthan formation was completely broken now. The ships were scattered, their pack discipline gone. Fear had replaced hunting instinct, and once that happened, predators stopped being dangerous. And here is what makes this situation really interesting, Jake added. In about 4 hours, I'm going to file a report about this encounter. That report will go to Naval Intelligence. They will analyze your ships, your tactics, your weaknesses. Then they will share that information with every human military unit in the sector. The silence on the comm channel was complete. Jake could almost hear the Vorthans thinking, realizing what they had gotten themselves into. Because that is what humans do when we encounter a new predator, Jake explained. We turn it into a solved problem. We study it until we understand it completely, and then we make sure it never bothers anyone again. The pack leader's voice was barely audible when he finally spoke. What do you want from us, human? Jake smiled. The negotiation phase was about to begin. Jake Morrison looked at his scanner display and smiled. The Vorthan pack formation had completely fallen apart. 6 of the most feared predators in the galaxy were now scattered across space like frightened animals. Their pack leader had just asked what Jake wanted from them, which meant they were ready to negotiate instead of hunt. What I want is actually pretty simple, Jake said, his voice still calm and friendly. I want you to think about something. Right now, you are hunting merchant vessels in this sector. Easy targets with light defenses and valuable cargo. Good business, I'm sure. Jake paused and checked his instruments. His ship was still surrounded, but the Vorthans were no longer acting like predators closing in for a kill. They were acting like creatures that had suddenly realized they might be in danger. But here is what happens if you keep doing that, Jake continued. Sooner or later, you're going to attack a ship with humans on board. Maybe a human merchant crew, maybe human passengers, maybe human security guards. And when that happens, everything changes. The pack leader's voice was barely a whisper. Changes how? Well, first, the humans on that ship are going to fight back, not like other species that panic and surrender. Humans fight harder when they are scared, and they fight dirtier when they are outnumbered. They will find ways to hurt you that you never expected. Jake made some adjustments to his comm system, broadcasting on frequencies that he knew other ships in the area would pick up. He wanted this conversation to be recorded. But that is just the beginning, Jake said. Because after that fight, whether you win or lose, you will have a much bigger problem. You will have attracted the attention of the human military. Jake could see on his scanner that the Vorthan ships were moving further away from his position. Fear was spreading through the pack like a disease. And here is what the human military does to predators, Jake explained. They do not just chase you away. They do not just try to arrest you. They study you like a science project until they understand everything about how you think, how you hunt, how you live. The younger Vorthan voice spoke up, sounding terrified. Pack leader, we should leave this sector immediately. Shut up, the leader snapped. But Jake could hear that he was scared too. Then they share that information with every human unit in the galaxy, Jake continued. They create training programs. They develop new weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter your hunting methods. They turn dealing with your species into a standard military procedure. Jake's voice became almost professorial, like he was giving a lecture at the academy. Within a year, every human patrol ship will have specific equipment for hunting Vorthans. Every human captain will know your weaknesses. Every human soldier will have trained to fight your species. You will go from being apex predators to being a solved problem. The silence on the comm channel stretched for almost a minute. Jake could imagine the Vorthans thinking about what he had just told them, realizing that everything he said was probably true. But here is the good news, Jake said brightly. I am just a cadet, and I really do not want to fill out the paperwork for an interstellar incident. Seriously, you have no idea how much paperwork the Academy requires for this kind of thing. Despite everything, Jake actually chuckled. So here is what I am thinking. You guys find somewhere else to hunt, preferably somewhere without humans. And I forget this whole encounter ever happened. The pack leader's voice was full of confusion. You would let us go? Why not? Jake replied. You have not actually hurt anyone yet, at least not today. You are just predators trying to make a living. I can understand that. But you need to understand that hunting in human space is bad for your health. Jake checked his long-range scanners. No sign of the backup that Commander Rodriguez had promised to send. He was still on his own, but that was fine. The situation was well under control. Think of it this way, Jake said. Right now, you are successful hunters in this sector. You know the territory. You know the shipping routes. You have a good thing going. But if you tangle with humans, all of that goes away. Jake's voice became more serious. Because humans do not just fight individual battles. We fight entire wars. And we fight them until we win completely. Ask the Confederacy of Rigel how their war with humanity went. Oh wait, you cannot. Because the Confederacy does not exist anymore. The Vorthan pack was now spread across several thousand kilometers of space. What had started as a perfect hunting formation had turned into a group of scared predators looking for an escape route. So what do you say? Jake asked. Do we have a deal? You find a new hunting ground, and I forget I ever saw you? The pack leader was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was full of defeat. We accept your terms, human. We will leave this sector and not return. Great, Jake said cheerfully. I am glad we could work this out peacefully. And hey, thanks for the interesting conversation. I learned a lot about Vorthan culture today. One by one, the Vorthon ships activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished into hyperspace. Within minutes, Jake was alone in the asteroid field with nothing but empty space and floating rocks for company. Jake sat back in his pilot seat and opened a comm channel to base. Control, this is Morrison. Section 7 Alpha is clear. No signs of raider activity. Returning to base. Copy that, Morrison. How was your patrol? Jake smiled to himself as he set course for the GSV horizon. Pretty quiet, actually. Just had a nice educational chat with some locals about Earth wildlife and human history. Nothing worth reporting. As his ship accelerated toward home, Jake thought about the encounter. He had not fired a single shot or used any weapons. He had simply reminded some predators what they were really dealing with when they messed with humans. Sometimes the most effective weapon was just helping others understand the truth. Behind him, the asteroid field was empty and peaceful. And somewhere, in deep space, a pack of Vorthon raiders was having a very serious discussion about finding a safer line of work.